Hello and welcome to the Go Read Some Books podcast. I am Shane Skelton with my friend Josh Fillmore.
Hello, hello.
And today we are talking about books.
Books, lots of books.
Books.
What you got in store for us today?
All right. I have a book that basically has been a phenomenon amongst the Christian circles. It is called The Harbinger.
Heard of it.
Yep. Published January 3rd, 2012. So it's a little bit older book. It is written by Jonathan Cahn. Now, Cahn, he leads this Hope for the World Ministries. He's a converted rabbi, and his teachings basically can be seen all over the world by television. You can listen to him on the radio daily. But really, this book has been a phenomenon. It really has. It spent 100 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot. It's gone into reprint over 22 times, and it has sold over 1.2 million copies as of right now.
Oh, wow.
So Amazon ranks this book number 2 on the list of Christian fiction.
Seen that.
And 7th on the list of Christian theology. Now,
wait.
That's important. That's important because I'm going to come back to that in a minute.
Wait a minute. That throws a red flag.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's important. All right. Now, this book, let me be honest, it largely escaped my view because I normally don't read books like this.
All right.
Until recently, a friend of mine asked me if I would review this series of books. I mean, he's got quite a few. And so I started with this one, and I've had quite a few people ask me about it, even my own family members that said, hey, look, have you read this book? And yada, yada, yada. So I'm like, nah. But I borrowed this book for the purpose of reviewing it, and I was interested in, what everybody was reading about. But let me just be honest with you. This book was a chore to read. Yeah, it really was for me.
Now, why do you say a chore?
I just don't get into books like this.
Okay.
I mean, I really don't. The end couldn't come soon enough for me.
Gotcha.
When I started, I thought because at the very beginning, I seen that this book was going to be way off base.
Got it.
Now, The Harbinger is meant to be fact presented in the form of a novel. Okay, so in reality, though, it's an unfortunate mixture of truth and error. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Within this work of fiction are claims that the author insists are factual and biblical, and that we ought to pay attention to them because they are of the utmost importance. And what he does is he claims to reveal an ancient mystery that holds the secret to America's future. Okay, so it kind of like sounds familiar with all this other,
Sounds like the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, all this kind of junk,
Okay.
And there's tons of books like that on the market. But here's what it gets you. It claims that the truth has been hidden now in the pages of Scripture.
Right.
And, it's going to take until now. This one man has come and dug it out for us all. And now he's revealed to us these great omens, okay? So essentially what he does, here's what he does. Let me give you the premise of what he does.
Okay.
This book is a long exposition of Isaiah 9:10. Now, Isaiah 9:10 says this, "The bricks are fallen down, but we will build with hewn stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we will change them into cedars." Now, Cahn sees the prophecy of Isaiah 9:10, which is to Israel, okay? But he says that this is applying directly to America as it does with Israel. And his premise is that America is a second Israel, a second nation, in other words, that has been dedicated to God and set apart for her purposes. Now,
I can see where that is. With
That's
the
truth.
Constitution and all that.
That's truth. Okay, America is set apart. Okay, America has certain ideals, and we're, as Reagan said, a city set on a hill. I got all that, but the error is we're not Israel.
Right.
Okay, so the purpose of this book, The Harbinger, is to unmask a series of what he calls 9 omens, Harbinger signs, if you will, which have been manifested in America since September the 11th, okay, when the terrorist attacks in 2001. And just as God warned Israel and gave her specific warnings of impending judgment, okay, over and over again, God now has given America a similar series of warnings, all beginning with 9/11, he claims. And now the time of warnings, all these warnings, are now past, and all that remains for America is just to make her choice. Okay, you going to return to the Lord, or is America going to continue to wander? Okay, now that's a legitimate question. Mm-hmm. Okay, I have nothing. I think we ought to call America back to revival. I get all that, and I preach all that, but what he's saying there is that if America, for example, returns, to the Lord by, let's just say, by reinstating the 10 Commandments, in the public squares, and reinstating prayer in the public schools, then once again, we're going to have God's blessing on us. But if we refuse, terrorism is going to continue to increase in our nation, and our nation is going to continue to suffer the same fate that Israel suffered. Okay, that's what he goes on to say. And of course, these omens that he says, these signs, are very obscure, and they're only visible in the hindsight, and basically they're only visible by stretching both Scripture and logic. Okay.
So let me stop for just a second. So the omens have been uncovered by the author? Or
yeah,
okay, got it. Okay, so that was where I was misconfused. I had thought,
one man's dug it out.
See, and I thought the Harbinger was somebody. That was where I was confused with that. So that was where I thought it was somebody on that aspect. I didn't realize. Okay, no, now I get what. No,
okay, now time is going to fail me to trace each of these omens. Okay, right. I mean how they're drawn out of that short text of Isaiah 9:10, right, and how they have supposedly been fulfilled in the U.S. But I want to spend some time basically by showing you the error and talking about the error of this book.
Okay.
Because it surprises me how many Christians have been taken by this book and by the series of books that this guy has. Now, I don't necessarily have – I mean, every man has a right to his opinion, and he can disagree with me, and our listeners can disagree with me as much as I disagree with them. And we don't have to be unkind or unchristian about that. I'm not saying that this guy's a wicked guy. I'm not saying that this guy doesn't know the Lord. I'm not saying all – but we definitely disagree doctrinally and positionally on this book. And what concerns me is all the different Christians that are – buying into this book, and it shows me a lack of real biblical understanding of how the Bible is and what doctrine is. See, this is what this book is basically portraying and saying, and promoting is what we call replacement theology. Okay, that's where Israel has, these promises that are to Israel and all that. But now, God's done with Israel, and America now has, can claim those promises, and America is the new Israel. All right, that's rank theology.
Right.
All right, we are not Israel. Okay, you cannot take passages that apply to Israel and apply them to America. Now, I get it. The scriptures, Paul said in Corinthians that the Old Testament was written for our learning. I understand all of that, and there are principles that we can look at that were for the nation of Israel. 2 Corinthians 7:14, if my people which are called by my name. Well, there's great principles there, even though that's a passage to Israel, and Isaiah 9 is a passage to Israel. We have to understand that particular passage to Israel and all those promises to Israel are still for Israel.
Right.
that will one day be fulfilled or has already been fulfilled for them. Now, there's application that we can make. Sure, if America turns to God, God will, restore and heal and bless. But he'll do that for India. Mm-hmm. He'll do that for Nigeria. He'll do that for any country.
Right.
Or anybody that turns, okay? Because he's a merciful God that way. So you can't take the promises and the prophecies of Israel and apply them directly to America. Now, in this book, he talks about the founding of America and its purposes and all that. And there's no doubt we're able, and historians are able to make the case that America was founded upon scriptural principles. I get that.
So was England, though, right?
Founded?
Well, I mean, they've got Christian background.
Well, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand where you're talking. But I'm talking about the founding of America. No doubt is upon scriptural principles. Okay, I get that, and we're blessed in that. Mm-hmm. But nowhere in the pages of the Bible are we told that America has a special standing in God's eyes.
Right.
Nowhere are we given even the smallest hint that America can be equated with Israel. Why? Such places like England or Canada or India or China are not. Okay? Certainly we cannot reasonably read Isaiah 9:10 as if it was a prophecy meant to apply equally to Israel and America. Okay, so that context, even in Isaiah 9, if you read the verses before and after, God blesses. It's just, okay, it's error. It's replacement theology is something that's big today. A lot of colleges are teaching that to our guys coming out of college and seminary, and it's a big thing. But it's error. This book does away with what we call dispensational truths. And I'm not a hyper-dispensationalist, okay? But I do believe in dispensations. I am a dispensationalist. In other words, I believe that there are periods of time in which God dealt with his people a certain way according to sin. He dealt with Adam and Eve differently. He dealt with, in the time of innocence. And then he, dealt with the dispensation of the kingdom and dispensation. We live in what's called the dispensation of grace. There's like 7 or 8 different dispensations. And each one of them, God deals with man according to his sin differently. Mm-hmm. And so this book does away with those dispensational truths. Okay? And it makes Old Testament dispensation promises and then prophecies of millennial dispensation and prophecy of kingdom dispensations to apply to dispensations of grace. You can't do that. It causes way too much confusion in your life. Now, so it does away with dispensational truths. And much like The Shack, okay, that book, The Shack, if you remember that, which was a piece of trash, that's what it should be called.
Instead of The Shack, should be The Outhouse.
Oh, that's pathetic. All right. But I use that for a point of comparison because Cahn displays the power, just like that book, of combining fiction and theology.
That was where I was going to get. Where's the fiction fall into this book?
Well, in my opinion, it's just about all fiction.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now, if you read the book, to his credit, let me just say, to his credit, in the opening of the book, it does say what you're about to read is presented in the form of a story, but what is contained within the story is real. Okay, so, he's up front with saying, okay, I'm going to do this. But here's the...
So, basically, he took the truth of the truth...
And presented it as a novel.
And presented it as a storyline that would get keep people's attention.
But let me show you. Let me let you in on a little secret about that. Okay, by writing fiction, okay, by taking truth but yet writing it as fiction, that allows the author to dictate the reader's reaction.
Right.
Okay, you can manipulate emotions by doing that. So he can present a mundane fact and then follow it up with a a gasp or an expression of awe. And it's like, I missed that, okay? And this is something that Cahn does often to his advantage, and it's something that I think he does by stretching logic, and then and then giving excitement to that. And so it's kind of like an effective tactic to keep the reader coming back. And there are some coincidences, and some things about the economy and all these things that, hey, I mean, okay, that's a good point and things like that. But just because there are coincidences and dates and things like that does not mean that they are connected.
Right.
All right. Do you know, I just got back from Dallas last week. I visited the spot where JFK was shot. Mm-hmm. JFK and Abraham Lincoln were shot on the same day.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but that don't mean that they're connected.
Right. That we're not connecting dots.
John Adams and Thomas Jefferson died within 4 hours of one another and were arch enemies for a long time, and then became reconciled and all that, and died within 4 hours. And one was mad because the other one beat him to the death. I mean, they had such a competition. Okay, that's cool. All right. There's tons of things like this that we can, make comparison to. That don't make it biblical.
Right.
Okay. So there's no sense of going to sleep at night scared.
Right.
Because, America is not mentioned in the scriptures and we're going to be annihilated. Listen, when you study the scriptures and you see that America is not mentioned in the prophecies of the end time nations and things, you got to understand those prophecies and the Old Testament prophecy those prophets did not see the dispensation of grace. They saw, from their dispensation over to the tribulation dispensation. And so those nations that you see there, Russia and Germany and all that, you got to understand that America is not mentioned there because of one fact, and that's the rapture of the church.
Right.
The rapture of the church is going to make America really non-relevant in the tribulation period. Mm-hmm. Now think about this, okay? America is, quote unquote, a Christian nation.
Right.
Okay, we know that. Now, America is down the tubes in a lot of ways, but I want to tell you, believe it or not, there's still a lot of Christians in America. Mm-hmm. I mean, even our vice president, I believe John Pence is a Christian. Mm-hmm. Now, Trump, I'm not quite sure. I mean, but there's no doubt Pence has made his Christianity and all that well known, and it's been documented, and he's lived a life to back it up.
Right.
Okay? So generals, there are generals that we have, same way. A lot of our guys in the military, same way, Christians. Pilots, senators, congressmen. I mean, our sheriff here, I believe we spoke here at our church, a good Christian man. So you take a lot of high-ranking people, all of a sudden in an instant is gone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to cripple us. There's no doubt about that. We're going to be rendered ineffective during this. So the reason why I believe we're not seen is not because we've been destroyed or annihilated by terrorism and there's just been this nuclear holocaust, basically,
right.
and we're just this Armageddon, this destroyed America. America is not there because the rapture.
We're not here.
The rapture. Not saying that everybody in America is going to be raptured, okay? I'm just saying that there's still a lot of people in this country that are born again and believe Christ. Right. Whereas you go to places like Russia and Germany and these places in the Bible that are mentioned, okay?
Right.
There's not the culture of Christianity there. There's not a church on every corner. There's not people in there that believes that Jesus Christ is the only way to heaven. You know what I'm saying? Right. So, I mean, yeah, there's still going to be strong nations. But America, I believe, is going to be rendered ineffective because of that. Mm-hmm. So I'm not necessarily going to bed at night worrying about being nuked.
Right.
I'm worried about, America being annihilated and this judgment coming. Listen, folks, read the Bible with some sense, okay? Now, to be fair, let me be fair with this book. It does contain a call to the gospel. All right, I'll give him that. And it's definitely one of the few highlights and rather a rarity for a book that makes its way to the bestseller list for as long as it did.
Right.
I give him that, okay? It's not that the Harbinger has nothing good to say. If you read it simply as fiction, hey, it's an intriguing book. I get that. But so many of the good things are built upon a poor and even dangerous foundation. And let me just say this, and I'll wrap this up. The book depends upon a fundamentally flawed way of understanding and applying the Bible. Now, it does that by treating the Bible as a mystery to be solved,
right,
rather than a clear and sufficient explanation of what we as believers are to be doing and what we believe concerning God and how we're to live for the glory of God in this world. The Bible is not a mystery to be solved like that. I mean, it's black and white. You pick it up, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. I mean, it's very black and white.
Right.
Okay, it tells us how to live very clearly. And it's not something, these omens you got to dig out and things of that nature. So even though Cahn may have some good things to say and he might be doing a good work, and I'm not necessarily against him at all, but let me just say there is absolutely no good reason to read or recommend this book, period.
Okay. Man, that hurts. That hurts a lot of people, I'm sure.
You know what? I know that, and one of the reasons why people are so caught up with it, and I thought, well, you know, truth is truth.
Right.
You know, especially us as Baptists, you know, and the people that I run with in particular, they ought to know better.
Yeah.
I mean, there are dispensational truths that have and replacement theology that listen here.
Well, that lost me with the word fiction anyway. So
I mean, you know, we ought to know better,
Yeah.
and maybe we just hadn't been taught, and we're just caught up in the emotion of it.
Right.
I don't know. I take it upon myself because maybe I haven't done enough to say, hey, this is wrong, and you know, here's some error. I'm not saying don't read it, because it's a good fictional book if you want to read it that way, but don't take it as the gospel. Don't take it as, okay, this is something that is going to happen to America, because it's taken way out of context.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of glad that we're not Israel, because I really like pork. And I'd be really upset if we had to strip pork and bacon out.
You like pepperoni pizza, don't you?
I like bacon. Let's just be honest. Anyway, I think that should wrap that up. One thing I want to add, everybody sees my hat, the Jesus is Lord hat. I have been asked hundreds of times.
I like that hat.
I've been asked where have I gotten this hat, so I have to give a plug to my buddy up in New York, Brian. He actually runs a website called kjvprepper.com. I'll actually link it there as well. He's got a code right now.
He ain't one of them weird ones, is he?
No, man. No, he's not one of those apocalypse guys. He's
Okay.
actually a born-again Christian and then the whole 9 yards, so he's
But
pretty
the
good.
word prepper, those kind of guys.
Yeah, I get it. And I think it's...
they buy into things like this book right here. You know what I'm saying?
And I think it's I think it's just a kind of a play on words because he's an outdoorsman and that kind of deal. So trying to reach, like we had talked before about, you know, the guys who believe that the apocalypse is going to happen and that the zombies are going to take over and that kind of deal. So he's trying to kind of get the word out that way. But I did want to give him a shout out. And if you guys are, you know, interested, he does T-shirts and all kinds of stuff. He's got a promo code. I believe it's LIFE. You get 20 or 25% off or something like that.
Yep.
But you can check out his website. He's also on Instagram as well, too.
Jesus is Lord. And by the way, we don't make him Lord. He is Lord.
That's exactly
Our
right.
vote don't count.
That's exactly right. But anyway.
God hath made this same Jesus whom you crucified, both Lord and Christ, Paul said.
There you go. All right, so I guess that'll wrap it up for today.
Yeah.
As always, you guys can find us on our social media links. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We haven't done much with Twitter, but we're also on YouTube. So if you're listening to the podcast, you can actually watch us talk, and you can actually see all the antics that goes on behind the audio. But also, too, if you're watching from YouTube, we do have a podcast. So we are on all the podcasting apps, and go to our website. Go readsomebooks.com. You can get the show notes that we went through today and also the links to the books if you decide that you want to read it for fiction.
Fiction. Only.
Only. All right. So as always, you got anything else you want to add?
Go read some books. Go read the Bible.
Go read I'll link the Bible, too, in here so that way you can get the truth of what actually is going on.
Go read the Bible.
Anyway, as always, God bless, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Take care.